Now, Americans, so many Americans, millions of Americans are frustrated and angry with the way the president has failed the country during this pandemic. We know 4% of the world's population, 22% of the deaths in the world are Americans. It's not because we don't have good doctors in Utah or in Wisconsin and Ohio. It's because of terrible presidential leadership. President Trump and Senator McConnell they've essentially left the country to fend for itself during this pandemic. The stock market's up, so Trump and McConnell seem to think everything's fine. Stock market's up, what the heck? They're oblivious to the families staring at stacks of bills. They're oblivious to the small businesses that are watching years, often decades, in some cases family businesses going back many, many decades, watching often decades of hard work and investment evaporate in a few short months. But the stock market's up, so Trump and McConnell seem to think everything's fine. Same story over and over again. Corporate lobbyists, their allies in Washington, do whatever it takes to make sure Wall Street recovers. And then they say, oh no, we really can't afford to help anyone else. I hear from small family-owned businesses all the time how they're struggling. They're under incredible stress. They're worried about whether or not they can make rent or make payroll. They've waited on the phone for hours and couldn't get answers about loans. These folks aren't lounging in a C-suite corner office. They don't have high-priced lawyers and accountants who can do all the paperwork. They don't have the lobbyists that line up outside Mitch McConnell's office helping them. They're fighting for their dreams, Mr. President. We know why they're struggling. We know why some of them still can't open their doors 7 months into this crisis because the president and this Senate have so botched this crisis. Again, 4% of the world's population, 22% of the world's deaths, and the president said, I take no responsibility. The president said, not my fault. The president said, I get a 10 out of 10 for I've managed this. President Trump has no plan, never has, to control the virus. He's not even tried. If the president, imagine, Mr. President, if President Trump back in March, instead of lying to the American people, he knew how serious it was. He told his Wall Street friends, and he told that reporter from the Post, I can't remember his name. He told them it was serious, but he didn't tell the American people. He lied to us. Imagine instead if the president worn a mask and stood up and treated us like adults and said to the American public, you know, this is really serious. This could turn into from an epidemic into a pandemic. We've got to fight back. I'm wearing a mask. I ask every American to wear a mask, just like we ask people to wear seat belts and stop at stop signs. I want every American to wear a mask. I want people to socially distance so we can get this by. But he didn't do any of that. Of course he didn't do any of that. But he also came up with no national testing, contact tracing strategy. He didn't invoke the Defense Production Act so that we could make cotton swabs and gloves and masks and gowns and all the things we needed to do to stay safe. He had none of that. He has no guidance on how businesses are supposed to protect their customers, no investment of our vast resources to help them do it. We see the results. We saw them in April and May and June and July, in August, in September, and now October. And in fact, in my state, as in many states, there are more coronavirus diagnoses every day, almost every day, than there were a month ago, 2 months ago, 6 months ago. Local restaurants closed for good. The big chains may recover. Communities that already didn't get a lot of investment, brown and black neighborhoods, rural communities, places you can't see from Trump Tower, those places are seeing their homegrown businesses shut their doors and lay off workers. Black-owned businesses have closed at twice the rate of white-owned businesses. We know Latino and Asian-owned businesses are getting disproportionately hurt. Our office hears from so many of these Ohio businesses. We've done a series of virtual roundtables with Ohio restaurants. One Ohioan in Zanesville talked about taking over the family business his dad first started 67 years ago. Business is down significantly. He tries to pay his employees a living wage and give them time off for vacations and family needs. He's a really good employer. He's afraid of letting his employees down. A bar owner in Bellefontaine told us his sales are down. He's worried about his own businesses. When he wrote to me, he didn't just talk about himself. He said he's worried about the ripple effects on the farmers and suppliers and truck drivers and so many others. Now he's dreading the winter when he won't even be able to use the patio. He wonders what he's going to do what the suppliers are going to do. And it's not just restaurants. The media reported a newsstand in downtown Cleveland owned by Mr. Patel, an Indian immigrant who came to Ohio and has lived the American dream. Built a better life, started his own businesses, employing other Clevelanders. Now the office building is empty, the food court is closed. His sales have dropped from $700 a day to just $200 a day. He's looking at possible choices unless the government helps. We know we can. We did it in the spring when we passed payroll protection. There are all kinds of implementation problems. The Secretary of the Treasury and the President seem more interested in the big guys than the little guys. Too many businesses went to the front of the line, but despite all that, we hear from businesses that are open today only because of PPP. I heard from Spangler Candy in Bryan, Ohio, family-owned union company. I've toured their plant and seen the great work this, I believe, fourth-generation management team has done. They've seen business drop 70%. They had to take their first federal support in their 114-year history using PPP to prevent layoffs. They kept their doors open. They provided pandemic premium pay for their Teamster employees. A music and arts venue, the West Side Bowl in Youngstown, talked at one round table about how they had $0 in revenue in the past 6 months. PPP kept their office staff and stagehands on payroll, but as it runs out, so will their ability to pay employees. Ohio Star Forge, a parts manufacturer in Warren, just north of Youngstown, represented by steelworkers, lost 90% of their business when auto plants shut down. PPP made a difference. They're now back to about 70% of their capacity. Poulter Berry Farm, is a family farm in Fremont. One of their crops is pumpkins. The major pumpkin buyers are amusement parks and fall festivals. Pumpkin sales were down. PPP was helpful, but now they're worried about whether or not they can repay. A-Plus Cleaners in Dayton has seen demand plummet. People don't need much dry cleaning when they're working from home. They were able to stay open with an EIDL loan and a CARES Act grant from the county. They're terrified about what happens when the money runs out. We have a bill to get more help to these businesses. The Small Business Lifeline Act, it would extend PPP through at least next spring. It would get more funding to the program so they can get more money out the door to these businesses. It would specifically target help to the truly small businesses that need it the most, including minority-owned businesses. It would extend the debt relief program. It would get help to nonprofits that we know are hurting just like businesses are. As important as these steps are, we just can't give businesses loans and think that takes care of it. When the virus is still raging, the customers don't have jobs. That's why we need a comprehensive bill that actually meets the magnitude of this crisis. This visceral, decades-long opposition from my colleagues to unemployment insurance, I don't know how they don't realize that when 600,000 Ohioans are getting $600 a week, they're spending that money at local businesses. They're keeping the economy going from just a total crevicing. They're helping the economy. They're helping local businesses. They're giving those businesses revenue. But when the $600 just stops, not only are those 600,000 Ohioans' lives just so difficult, but it makes the businesses the businesses of which they're patrons, the businesses that they patronize, it obviously hurts their bottom line. I think the stories from these businesses, Mr. President, really get to the fundamental question of what sort of country we want to live in. When we invest in small business, we invest in people and communities, not stock buybacks, not executive bonuses. I know that Senator McConnell and his colleagues here always are looking out for the stock market, always are looking out for Wall Street, always want to hear about stock buybacks and executive bonuses. I know that's their thing, but during a pandemic, I wish it were less their thing. The stakeholders in these businesses, they're not nameless, faceless shareholders. They're the owner's neighbors. They're family members. They're the people we see or used to see at our kids' schools, in the grocery store, and at church. A year from now, do we want to be left with only the biggest companies that follow the Wall Street business model that treats workers as expendable? Ohioans know all too often what happens when you let Wall Street run things and you ignore Main Street. Our communities have watched for decades as factories close and investment dried up and storefronts boarded over in towns and cities that once were thriving. When people in those towns wake up, they realize the only jobs you can get are at a big box chain for rock bottom wages with no health care, no paid sick leave, no power over your schedule. Is that what we want for our future? We have the resources to fix this. We're the greatest, richest country in the world. Let's rise to meet the moment. Let's pass a comprehensive bill that gets to help to our businesses, our workers, and their customers. And let's get the communities the support they need.